Hey everybody, I'm Laura Beth Wanger. Welcome back to Thoughts and Feelings and a video post. So today I thought I would show my face to you. It's been a little while since I did one of these, and I really want to share an imagination meditation practice with you toward the end of this recording. So we're in for a little bit of a wild ride because I've promised myself that after restarting this recording like 7 times, I am not doing that anymore. And we are just going to roll with whatever comes out of my mouth. So good luck to all of us. All right. This week, I want to talk more about the power of imagination in healing practices, in transformation, in any kind of like self-help work. I shared a Philip Pullman quote that I really love with y'all last week. And let's see, how's it go? Without imagination, you think you see more truth, but actually you see less. And I think this is such a powerful quote for our time because we're living in this world that really values materialism. And I'm not talking about like material girl Madonna stuff. I'm talking about this idea of scientific materialism that we don't believe it unless we can touch it, unless we can prove it, unless we've seen some good studies about it, which means that imagination gets treated like something for kids, something that doesn't matter. And in fact, it's interesting. We think about products of imagination must be imaginary. And imaginary is kind of like a word that doesn't get a lot of respect, doesn't deserve a lot of respect in people's minds. Imaginary means not real. But the truth is that with imagination, as the quote says, we see more truth. Imagination lets us see possibilities that we can't even comprehend yet. I wrote last week about that time when I was working at that corporate job, that miserable corporate job that if you've been following along with me, I was very unhappy at. And during that time, I was introduced to a quote by Henry Ford that I'm going to share with you. You've probably heard it. If we always do what we've always done, we'll always get what we've always got. It's such a simple quote, but it's so powerful and it's so true. It speaks exactly to this concept of if we just keep doing what we've always been doing, we're never going to do anything different. In other words, like a record needle stuck in a groove, we just go around and around in a circle. And in fact, that's a great symbol for samsara, for the cycle of suffering that we're kind of caught in, according to Buddhism. But how do we break out of that? We need the power of imagination. That quote, the Henry Ford quote, always makes me think too of this quote by Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche. He's my teacher from Turgar International. And it was actually around that time at the bank that I was introduced to this guy. I think this is the second copy of the book I bought. I gave the first one away, but this one is super duper dog-eared and highlighted. And it falls open to this page that I love so much. I'm going to share with you right now. He says, at any given moment, you can choose to follow the chain of thoughts, emotions, and sensation that reinforce a perception of yourself as vulnerable and limited, or to remember that your true nature is pure, unconditioned, and incapable of being harmed. At any given moment, you can choose to follow the chain of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that reinforce a perception of yourself as vulnerable and limited, or to remember that your true nature is pure, unconditioned, and incapable of being harmed. Wow, it's so powerful. You can follow the conditioning you've always had, but there's this other thing you might be able to do too. He goes on, this is a little bit more. If you'll bear with me, I think this is worth hearing. I'm going to include this too in the post when I send this out. He says, we choose ignorance because we can. We choose awareness because we can. Samsara and nirvana are just different points of view. If you're determined to think of yourself as limited, fearful, vulnerable, or scarred by past experience, know only that you have chosen to do so and that the opportunity to experience yourself differently is always available. I take so much comfort and so much heart, especially in this last sentence. The opportunity to experience yourself differently is always available. This reminds me in those moments when I feel like there are no other opportunities, when I feel like I don't have choice, then maybe it's just that I don't see it yet. And this is why having somebody else to work with, having a teacher, having a companion along our path is so helpful because they can help us to remember. They can have the imagination that we might not be able to have yet. I also love too how that quote highlights the agency that we have. He says very clearly, you're making a choice. And so perhaps in the past, we've had to make choices that kept our world really small and really safe. We think of ourselves in certain ways because that's what's been successful for us in the past. So if we do have a history of trauma, it's not so much that the trauma was so horrible. I mean, likely it was, but it's the adaptations that we made in order to survive that trauma that we live with and that carry us forward. Those adaptations continue to be the cycles that we live in, the choices that we make over and over again. There's a failure of imagination to think about anything different simply because we have this very safe pattern that we've had to use just in order to survive. So there's no blame, there's no shame, there's no judgment around this. This is a choice that we had to make at that time. And now we can continue to make that choice, or perhaps we can imagine ourselves differently. Perhaps we can know that something else is available. So there have been times where I read that quote and felt a little bit like, a little bit judged, a little bit like I was judging myself. Why can't I make a different choice? And looking at it now from the point of view of imagination and agency, I can see that I haven't always had the imagination to be able to choose something different. I haven't always recognized my own agency, my own power to make a different choice. The practices that Mingyur Rinpoche shares in this book, many of the practices that I have learned since then have been really helpful to me in being able to find different ways to experience the world, being able to use my imagination to feel into something different, sometimes through the power of the body, sometimes through the power of the mind. But it's always been imagination that's this through line. And in Vajrayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, as I shared with you last week, imagination is a potent tool and one that we use a lot. So let's transition now to talking a little bit about the kind of meditation that we're going to practice together. You may have done this before. It's called Glen meditation, Tonglen meditation. It means sending and taking. And the basic idea is that we're taking in suffering, transforming it into something else, into healing, into compassion, into love, into relief, into the antidote for whatever it is that the suffering is. And then we send it back out to that person. But this is also a practice that we can do for ourselves. The way that we're going to explore it today is something that I learned really early on from an instructor in the Turgar tradition. So the Turgar is the organization that Mingyur Rinpoche founded. This was part of a Joy of Living training. I've never heard it taught or practiced anywhere else since then, but I really love it, and I've used it with many of my clients and with myself um, to some interesting and I think really helpful kind of results. Before we get started, it's really important to understand that nothing we do today can harm you. Nothing we do today can hurt you. Um, when we take in this suffering or this pain, you can imagine inside yourself kind of a cauldron or a container in which these things are mixing so it doesn't permeate or like the suffering doesn't get stuck on us or in us. However, if you feel like this isn't right, or if you feel like you are starting to take on that pain, just stop the practice. It's okay. Not every practice is for everybody, and then it might not be right for you right now. Mingyur Rinpoche says, and I think this is really true, there's a lot of wisdom behind it, that the intention is what's going to keep us safe. So that even if things don't go exactly right, as long as we have the right intention, then we're protected. And so the intention that we're going to set beforehand is that whatever we do today is going to be of benefit to myself and to others in the world. You formulate that however you like, but we're going to get there together. So to begin, Let's make yourself comfortable. You could be seated, you could be lying down, whatever it is. And take a moment and let yourself settle into your seat. And then I want to invite you to bring to mind somebody or someone that you love very deeply and very easily. Maybe a pet, an animal in your life, somebody that's in your life now, or maybe someone that's no longer with us. Imagine them in front of you and see if you can take in that feeling of love and compassion that arises when you think of them, when you think of how they feel toward you. So there's this maybe feeling in your body of love and compassion, kindness, maybe a sense of warmth. Let yourself feel that for a moment. And then reflect for a moment that this loving kindness, this compassion, is something that all beings want. It's something that we all want in our lives. We want to be happy, that's love, and we want to be free from suffering, and that's compassion. So Mingyur Rinpoche says that every time we blink our eyes, this is evidence of our loving kindness and compassion. That is our true nature. We're trying to rid ourselves of that discomfort, that dry eye that doesn't feel good. If you notice as you were listening, maybe you're wiggling around a little bit in your seat, or maybe you're rearranging yourself to be more comfortable. That's your loving kindness and compassion in action for yourself. And this is what is called your Buddha nature, your essential goodness. And so everybody has this wish to be happy and free from suffering. And now, before we start the practice itself, we're already in it. But before we start the actual taking and sending practice, set an intention that this practice that we do today might help us so that we can help others, so that we can help others to find that feeling of love and compassion, that all beings could be happy and free from suffering. Okay. And now bringing to mind that person, that object, that animal, whatever it is that you were working with initially, for whom you so easily can feel that sense of love, that sense of compassion. Imagine that there's something about them that isn't quite feeling good for them, that they are suffering in some way. And maybe this is true. Maybe they're sick, or maybe they have a heartache, or maybe a disappointment in their life. Maybe they struggle financially. If they're no longer living, you can recall a time when they were in discomfort or distress. You can always pretend to. We're using our imagination. And now imagine that as you breathe in, you are taking in that discomfort, that suffering, that distress. You might see it as black smoke or a gray cloud. We inhale it in, and then inside the container of our bodies, we alchemize that, we transmute it, we transform it. We change that suffering into freedom from suffering, into healing, into love, and we exhale that back out to them. Inhale, we take in that pain, and exhale and send them relief. It's this simple. So staying with this for a few moments. If you notice that you're getting caught up in logistics or your mind has wandered, just let your mind rest. Just notice that you're breathing instead, if you like, or look around the room for a moment. And whatever it is, if you're able to work with it, whatever it is that that person or animal is experiencing, that discomfort, we breathe it in and then we send them relief. And we'll repeat that a few more times on your own. Good. And then let's let that visualization go. Let your mind rest. Imagine that your mind just drops into your body now, like sitting down in your favorite chair. Nothing special that you need to do, just letting your mind rest. So here we're not meditating, which is itself the meditation. And now we come to a different type of, a different variation of this practice. If you liked the first variation that we did, you can stay with that, or you can practice this next one with me. So now we're going to imagine or remember yourself at a time where you were unhappy, when you were suffering in some way. Now I want to suggest that you don't remember the biggest heartbreak of your entire life. Find something that was maybe a little painful, but not like not heartbreaking. A time where you were unhappy, a time where you really needed some comfort and some love. And now we're going to do Tonglen meditation for that historical version of you. So remember what it was like to be that way. Remember the feelings, remember the emotions, but see it outside yourself. Picture yourself. Picture historical you, a past version of you, unhappy. And now, as you inhale, take in that suffering, a cloud of gray smoke. We inhale. And as you exhale, we send relief, compassion, whatever message it is that that past version of you needed. Inhaling whatever that limited imagination was at the time. And as you exhale, sending out the knowledge that things are going to be okay, or at least that they're going to get better. Because they did, you're not in that situation anymore. Inhaling in the suffering, exhaling, sending out relief and love and compassion and care. Remember, if it feels too difficult or you get hung up, just stop and let the mind rest. Good, another moment or two here. Whatever the emotion was that was causing a problem, whatever the situation was that was causing a problem, we take it in, we transform it, and we send back into the past this relief, this hope, this light. And now again, maybe just another breath or two with this, repeating as often as we're able, as often as we feel like we can or want to, taking in that pain and transforming the suffering into support and kindness. And then let's let the mind rest again. I want you to, if you like, I want to invite you just to notice, how are you? How was that experience? Current version you taking and sending with past version of you. Notice any emotions that you're feeling now. Notice if there is a sense of spaciousness or constriction. Notice if your feelings toward that past version of yourself feel different. Notice if your feelings or experience of yourself feels different now. Okay, and we have one last variation on this practice to explore. And then this one, we imagine that a future version of ourselves is practicing Tong Glen for us. So you can explore this differently. You can imagine that you are that future version of yourself sending to you now. Or you can imagine that you are yourself now, should be pretty easy, receiving that white light, that healing, that relief, that compassion, that understanding from future self. In fact, what you might do is toggle back and forth naturally between the two. So don't get too hung up at the start. We're going to practice this one together just like we've been doing. And so take a moment to feel into yourself right now. Notice any discomfort that you may have in your body or any experience you're having emotionally or mentally that you're not loving. Any little suffering or bigger suffering that you're working with now. And remember that this is just evidence of our true nature. We want to be happy. We want to be free from suffering. This is how we are as living beings. And now imagine yourself in the future. Could be a month in the future, could be 5 years in the future. And you're looking back at this experience that you're having right now. Physical discomfort in your body, or a situation that you're struggling with in your life, or mental and emotional experience that you're having, a challenge with somebody you love. And now the future version of you breathes in that suffering, transforms it into healing, understanding, compassion, love, and sends it back to you now as white light. Future version of you breathes in that suffering, that pain, that discomfort. Black smoke comes in through the nostrils, transforms alchemically and magically inside the container of the body of future you, and exhales it back to present version you as compassionate, healing, white light, love. We're pretending, but it's powerful. Continue with this for a little while if you can. Remember, if you get lost or it feels too confusing, that's okay. Just mentally set it aside and let yourself rest. It's really important too. But if you can stay with it for just a little while longer, imagine that future you is looking back at present moment you with more experience, with more perspective, with a better understanding of all the possibilities that are in front of you. And she takes in the suffering, knowing that it can't harm her, it can't hurt her. And she sends it back out as this healing, cleansing, purifying light that helps us to understand and to see more clearly, to imagine that there is something else, a better future is coming, or there's a possibility of feeling better that we weren't aware of. You decide what message it is that you need to hear. Take another moment with this. And now again, let's let that go. and just let your mind rest. Let your mind drop into your body and let your mind and your body rest together. Check in again and see, how are you? What do you notice in your body? How is your mind? How is your heart? How is your soul? As you rest here, let me share this piece with you one more time from The Joy of Living. At any given moment, you can choose to follow the chain of thoughts, emotions, and sensations that reinforce a perception of yourself as vulnerable and limited, or to remember that your true nature is pure, unconditioned, and incapable of being harmed. You can remain in the sleep of ignorance, or remember that you are and always have been awake. Either way, you're still expressing the unlimited nature of your true being. Ignorance, vulnerability, fear, anger, and desire are expressions of the infinite potential of your Buddha nature. There's nothing inherently wrong or right with making such choices. The fruit of this practice is simply the recognition that these and other mental afflictions are nothing more or less than choices available to us, because our real nature is infinite in scope. Although the language of this text is Buddhist, this is applicable to all beings everywhere. We have more choice available to us than we may be able to see at any given moment. And so, in a practice like this, where we can imagine ourselves differently, where a past version of us can receive the hope and the healing and the possibility that there is something that will change. And we can even imagine a future version of ourselves that isn't suffering in the way that we are now. This loosens something in our mind, makes something available to us that might not have been there before. No, I really love these practices. So, to conclude our meditation practice formally, we can do what's called dedicating the merit. So, just as we started our practice with an intention, now we're going to formally close this practice by saying, in your own words, however you like, may this practice be helpful to me so that I can help other beings. May it make change in the world. Whatever it is that's important to you, being able to help others, climate change, world peace, political peace. We now ask that this work that we've done be useful in some way. It's like we're kind of sewing up the practice and setting it aside. And this is what helps us not to become overly self-centered with it, not to become too inflated with it. This is an important part of the practice. It's just built naturally into to Vajrayana Buddhism. Whew. So let's see, was there anything that I didn't say that I wanted to say? I'm sure there was. I want to just mention one more time, return to this quote one more time. This is the second piece of the quote. If you're determined to think of yourself as limited, fearful, vulnerable, or scarred by past experience, know only that you have chosen to do so, and that the opportunity to experience yourself differently is always available. So, again, rather than seeing that as sort of a blaming language, like you're making this choice, I see it as empowering. We can make a choice. There is a choice that's available to us, although it may not have seemed that way in the past. So these practices, these imagination practices, help us to see that there are different ways to relate to ourselves and to the world. Ava, come here. Well, that's it for today. I hope this was interesting for you. I want to encourage you to practice this a few times and see what feels good for you, what works well for you. And as always, a reminder that if something about it didn't work for you or you didn't like it, That doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. Doesn't even mean that it's a bad practice. Just means it isn't right for you right now. And that's why there are so many different ways that we can practice and so many different things that we can do. So, from Ava and me to you, wishing you an imaginative and a fruitful and a resourcing day ahead or evening ahead. I look forward to hearing from you about how you related to this practice. Take care, everybody.